November 5th. And the first part of the agenda, the first order would be to have our roll call. Ms. Remsen, no, is not here. Ms. Cece?
Here.
Ms. Gibbs?
Here.
Mr. Goodwin?
Here.
Ms. Penn Williams? Ms. Prock?
Here.
And who am I missing? That's it. I'm not sure if Stuart is joining us. I would assume he is. And Sam Mather and Preeti Mather from ARC Bridge is along here with us. So our next order of business will be to accept the minutes. I'm hoping people had a chance to review them. Is there any comments or additions or deletions?
Not for me.
So I would
No.
need somebody to request to approve them.
I'll motion.
Yeah. Or
Great.
Diane, you can motion. I'll make a second.
Great, great. So we can move to accept the minutes. And at this time, I would like to invite public participation.
Which
And
looks like that's our other member, Diana.
yes, and she will be speaking to us, and then I have an update on the whole situation as far as Diana Palladino Christopher is concerned.
Sounds good.
So she's up, and I am going to call on her. Hi, Diana.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Okay.
Diana Palladino Christopher, 1 Naples Avenue. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to take a moment to hop on in my unofficial capacity and thank Preeti and Esther for getting me the requested district options with the street lists outlined in option 2 and 3. What was sent was exactly what I needed to really deep dive. So I do appreciate. As I mentioned at the last meeting, I still strongly believe that we need to consider neighborhood dynamics when looking at this, in addition to the census blocks and the recommended percentages by the consultants. So with that, I feel this panel on here has a great understanding of Norwalk, which is why we're all here. And so I'd really like to see how we can accomplish that. From my perspective as an incoming registrar of voters, as I said at the last meeting, certain neighborhood dynamics I feel do need to be re-examined. Over the last few years, I know, some of these areas have seen significant development and other changes within their neighborhoods. And particularly what I've noted is, and what I perceive or believe is an imbalance in representation, particularly with the council districts. As I said at the last meeting, my examples were Park Hill Avenue, Lockwood Lane, Buckingham Place. They're currently represented by District A. And again, in my strong opinion, they seem to more align with the East Norwalk community, which is part of District C. These shifts in neighborhood identity, I think, really need to be factored in this process. A council representative living in the Spring Hill area has a very different neighborhood experience, perhaps, than a resident living in East Norwalk. For tonight, there's some confusion. I don't know if Stuart is on or not. And if he is, amazing. If he's not, perhaps, this is definitely something that I would want to connect with him on if appropriate, or perhaps you all can elaborate. But there's some confusion as to how that would be workable from a taxing district point of view. specifically with the first taxing district. And I would like to really understand what those options are and how we could address them. As registrar of voters, to ensure a smooth transition. What would the polling location look like? Would we indeed have split ballots? Has that been done before? How many voters would it impact? And, again, I suppose this is work that once I'm in my official capacity, I would be able to do, but given the timeline, I'm hopeful that Stuart can provide that information. I did work in the office last Friday, but Stuart was on vacation. So I did not have an opportunity to connect with him there. But to me, putting in the work as registrars and this committee just makes sense now. Because again, I feel and I think a greater base would agree that these neighborhoods just aren't aligning. And I feel that's the purpose we're here for. So I'll wrap up. As the incoming registrar, I would be willing to do the work with Stuart to ensure communications, for voters and ensure a seamless process for the voters and the candidates that would be affected. However that may look, if this is feasible. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, I do feel I'm still kind of where, I'd love to see a hybrid of option 2 and 3. I know I mentioned specific streets, but certainly that could be tweaked depending on the recommendations of everyone, including the firm. And I think that would be the best thing to really kind of understand those further insights and the feasibility of moving forward with those suggestions. And for right now, in full transparency, I definitely have the most working knowledge, I think, as a Norwalker in terms of District C and District A, having lived in both of those districts. I have a great familiarity of what those streets look like and those issues and concerns look like. Perhaps I'm not as well versed in the other districts, but having looked at it and certainly having a pretty wide knowledge of other districts as well, more so than probably the average, person who, in Norwalk. I do feel that really A and C is where the most attention I see lies. So thank you, everybody, and I look forward to discussions.
Thank you so much, Diana. And if anybody from the commission would like to share any comments with Diana, I would appreciate you doing that now. Okay, I'm going to make a few comments, and that is, this will be the last commission meeting that Diana will not be official. The ordinance committee's public hearing was this week. It was passed. It's being submitted to the council for their September 10th meeting next Tuesday. And our next meeting next Thursday, Diana should be in place as the official designee. So hopefully we can officially move forward with her valuable input. And Stuart, I'm not sure if you caught Diana's comments, but hopefully you did.
I just got on about a minute ago. I sent the invite for this thing home from the office. It doesn't come, never got there. I found an old one, took me about 15 minutes, but here I am.
So Diana's
She had some
hand is
comments. I thought I read some, but that's about it.
great. What I think I may do here is I'm going to call on Diana to quickly summarize for Stuart and hopefully plan some kind of synergy between the two of you. Diana?
Yes, hi, Stuart. I'm never good at summarizing. I'd love to talk. Let me do this. I got this. So Stuart, I know you weren't able to attend the last meeting, but one of the things that I was looking at the last meeting, and I was hopeful to get further insights from you, given your experience and tenure, was I had brought up, and I know it has been discussed at other meetings, for example, streets like Park Hill Avenue, Lockwood Lane, Buckingham Place, they're currently represented by District A. But yet, in my strong opinion, as an incoming registrar, I feel they're more aligned with the East Norwalk community, which is part of C. So I was really looking to see some of those shifts in neighborhood identity, especially in my view. We've thought to a council representative living in the Spring Hill area has a very different neighborhood experience than a resident living in East Norwalk. And there was some confusion as to how that would be workable from a taxing district point of view. Specifically, I know with the first taxing district. And so what I'm looking to really understand is what the options are, how we could address that as registrars. Is it feasible? Can we guarantee a smooth transition for voters and the candidate affected? What would the polling locations look like? Would we have split ballots? Has it been done before? What are your thoughts? How many voters would it impact? Because to me, putting in the work now makes sense because I do truly feel that these neighborhoods align best. And so that's kind of where I was, is to really understand that first taxing district aspect, because I feel looking at the options 2 and 3, I would love to see a hybrid of those, because I think they really address that neighborhood balance, representation, and the population.
Okay,
You want to sit with us, Matt?
well, if you want my opinion on it, I mostly agree with you. The problem is the taxing district lines. The original proposal by the consultants was to make the line on East Avenue, which would work fine. The only confusion about what that would do to the taxing district elections was in the mind of one of the commissioners. And there is no real problem with that because all those people would remain in the taxing district and would vote. You would have them vote at much like at Nathan Hale, probably much like the other small portion of A4 does at the moment. Problem is, it leaves that 90 voters at Glendenning Street with no place to go, and opening a voting location for 90 voters is expensive, and no one will work there because there'll be no work all day long. So it's a disaster from our point of view of administering elections. They could be moved to D, except that the consultant says that they won't do that or give us the numbers, because the line cuts across a voting census blocks. So we seem to be in a quandary because no one would move that. They would have to leave that in A, which still cuts across census blocks, but apparently only if you change it is it a problem.
Can I ask?
So that's where we're at.
Can I ask? Nathan Hale currently has that front or rear voting location.
Right, and they'd have to do that again with
Right.
instead now with the people that we moved over from A1 and A2 would be the back of Nathan Hale people. We can't do them at City Hall because City Hall we're doing early voting for everything, so we wouldn't have the space to do that at City Hall, and there really are no other possible buildings.
But isn't that Nathan Hale location being utilized anyway for such a mere number of people? So if
Well, right now there's a small number, about 400 that are part of A, but not in the taxing district. that voted Nathan Hale. If you move that whole group, you would end up with those people now being part of C, which is fine. And they aren't in the taxing district, so they don't need a separate ballot. The only ones that would need a different ballot were the part between East Avenue and the old taxing district line, which is, well, seen on your map between those two. We're just flip-flopping who would be using it. But you're left with a part of A4, but there's no A4 voting district anymore. That's that little strip in the north along Glendenning, of which I believe we have about 90 voters.
But couldn't we place those 90 voters at Nathan Hale?
Well, that'd be a third polling place in Nathan Hale. They get a different ballot than anybody else.
So the people working that election for those 400, they can't operate for that other district as well?
Well, we wouldn't have the space. You'd have to have a whole separate voting line and voting district and tabulator and equipment, which we don't actually have. And for 90 people, no one will work there. We have a trouble now staffing A4 because there's so little voting goes on. Everybody sits and gets bored to death all day long. But with just 90, you'd be lucky to see a voter you'd be like some of the presidential primaries we just had where you didn't see, about 3 people vote all day.
Could that election be held separately?
Well, we'd have to find another polling place just for those 90 people, which is actually more expensive than finding a third location or some other location. The best move would be to put it in D, but apparently that doesn't work for our consultants. It'd be easy to put them in D. And in fact, Chris Brown, who lives in that little sliver, used to represent D when they originally thought that much of that was in D. Take a look at it close. When they use a big black marker on a small map, you can't tell where the line is. You can only get it when you get quite a bit of detail.
Stuart, is it true that the reason it didn't work for the consultants was because it broke up census blocks, or am I?
That's the only reason I'm aware of.
Okay.
And they wouldn't, they refused last meeting I was at, to verify any of the numbers I had on estimates because of the cross census blocks. However, they already are doing that on Ward Street there, where you see the part to the left of Glendenning, and we're going through some apartment complexes right there. And the line is, again, crosses census blocks now. The map you see drawn here is inaccurate as to the yellow, at least, which should go up to the red line there where it says Ward Street. The yellow color of A goes up there in the taxing district. South of that line is in the taxing district. Now, mind you, it's still difficult. Yeah, there you go. There's some of the little pieces. Okay. They break up census blocks, and that seems to be a problem. I'm not aware of any legal problem, but the consultants have said that that they can't do it. I'm not certain why they can't, but I don't believe it's a legal requirement.
If I may answer the question here, Stuart, it's not like we don't want to use it, but then how do we get the data? And this data that we use, which is used across the country, across the board, it's census blocks. And so for each census block, I'm able to tell you how many Hispanics, non-Hispanic whites, I have that information.
Right. How are you doing it now for that little stretch I was talking about, since they're already the current population and census information for A and D is already broken by that one line?
See here, that is your taxing district. And what we are doing is we are trying to recreate the current council districts based on the census blocks, and that is why the line is here versus over here, which is in the middle of, see if you look at it, it's,
Yeah.
I'm just zooming in so you can see a little bit better. So it will just take a bit to draw. Okay. See here, like this line, this taxing district, and
And that's the line with, and that is the line in for the Council District A. That is the northern line of Council District A.
exactly. So whenever the last time council districts were drawn, they just used this without following any census blocks. So if you
Well, they
look,
use lines all over the place for the taxing districts because they precede all
Yeah.
of that information because they're
Yeah.
100 and some years old.
yeah, and what we are doing is we want to use the census blocks so that you see here, the blocks are somewhat more logical, or minutes like they are blocks. And that is why we are not drawing the line here for D. We are drawing it here because we are taking the whole block.
You didn't put that, that's not part of your proposal. You didn't say that was the new line for D.
That is what we said, you know, that there would be, see, technically we haven't made any changes in this area, but these changes are due to census block boundaries. So we
Okay,
can
but
draw it.
so what, that green area just south of the red line that is actually the line between A and D, is that green area to be part of D or part of A?
Part of D.
Okay, so now you've made that a polling place along with the one I'm talking about. Now you've created two additional polling places that we have to service somehow with different ballots, meaning
And
it's a different
your-
polling place.
Your polling places are based on your precincts, right?
Yes,
And so what happens typically is after the redistricting is done, the precincts are adjusted accordingly so that you don't run into these multiple polling places or these
but
situations.
that little strip there is nonetheless part of A or part of the taxing district, whichever council district it's in, meaning that it's got a different ballot from the people south of it and the people north of it, because it has to have taxing district commissioners on it, and it wouldn't fit in either one of the other two. That's the problem. And if they have a different ballot, we have to have different people to service them and hand the ballot out and all that, because you got to keep track of who's in it and who isn't in that little strip. Right there.
Yeah, this strip, everybody should be in D. And it's, I would say these lines.
But they
are
don't,
a little-
but it's a separate precinct because they're also part of the taxing district.
Yeah, in different districts.
Yeah, they would be in different taxing districts, but see, you tell me.
Well, that's the problem. That's all I'm telling you. You've
Yes.
created two little strips. They can't be in the same voting district. The two of them are not in the same voting district. They are separate, and they are separate from both the green and the yellow because they have a different ballot in each case.
Then what happens to it? Let me ask you this. The taxing district goes like this over here.
Yep.
And so, but your current council districts go over here. So how do you handle this part?
Well, the little bit of green there, there's a little piece of it there along Plattsville, and they voted, they're part of A3 if you look at the map. So they're currently voting at Kendall.
It's just that the taxing districts have been, they're very old and
I agree. I'd love to get rid of the lines. I'd love to hold those elections completely separately, but then you can't change the lines because only the legislature can do that. Although apparently, and Muchnick was looking into this, there may be something in their own charters that would allow that to their lines to change. Those lines do not correspond to their service districts.
Mhm.
They're just lines from 100 years ago that are burdening this process. I would love to change them. I completely agree they should be changed. I just don't know how it can be legally done, and I know it can't be done by this committee.
I
I'm
think.
sorry,
Diana
that's
has
that's
her
the
hand.
legal situation. I suggested you get an opinion of Corporation Counsel before and about this if you need it, but that's where we're at.
What's the legal language on that? Is there somewhere where I can read that or understand that?
I'd have to go over it with you, but the first part is the actual description, legal description of the taxing districts, which follows these various roads and taxing district lines and roads and so forth. There's an ambiguity on the right-hand end of it because it follows and then continues, and there's actually no connection between the two, but it's very small, and we've just sort of finessed that problem. But I tried to get the previous administration prior to Rillings to deal with it, but they weren't interested in even talking about it. All these things came up because of the state redistricting, and we actually looked at where the lines were, and there were lots of things there were things that were missing. There were houses that were on the wrong sides of streets for the numbers. As you know, Norwalk has lovely numbers that are out of order, numbers that are where the odd and even are not on the proper sides of the streets to be consistent. And you're right in the middle of a lot of that kind of stuff. We have a phony street in one case because the state district line, 37 and 37 and a half Spring Hill Street or Avenue, I forget, are in different legislative districts, but they cannot be put in different districts in the state computer system because a number and the number and a half have to be in the same district because that's the way the system works. So we had to make up a fake street.
But if we were able to conform to these recommendations,
Sure, but if you could move them out of and solve the taxing district problem, then that map would be fine. That original map would be fine.
and find two polling locations and split them with another.
Right, but you are not talking every such election spending $7 or $8 or $10,000 of city money for these tiny numbers of voters, and a good deal of hiring and effort on our part. So it's a mess.
But
Extra transportation costs, extra ballots to fit this odd configuration of districts. That's all.
But if we're
Stuart,
utilizing,
Stuart,
Yeah.
and Diana, Stuart, would you be open, as Diana has recommended, to have a meeting and have some kind of collaboration so that at our next meeting, which is next Thursday, you're both on this, you're both in agreement as far as some recommendations for this committee?
I'd be happy to meet. I can't
Okay.
guarantee we'll both be on the same page because these things I've been telling you are state law issues
Right.
and money
So-
issues. If you want to spend the money and the council wants to spend the money, and I don't know where we're going to get the extra tabulators, they don't exist at the moment, and the extra equipment, but they want to spend all that money. That's, we can live with that somehow. I don't have storage for it currently, and this is why I refuse to be on the committee in the first place, because you're making me rule on my own budget and office procedures.
And
It's a
Stuart,
conflict of interest.
what I'm trying to help our commission here understand is that both you and Diana are in a collaboration of some recommendations for us. So if you both are agreeable to have a meeting
Of
and
course.
be able to come back to our commission next Thursday, that would be great. is there anybody else that has a comment relative to that?
Well, I think I saw Diane Cece had her hand raised,
Oh, I'm sorry.
unless unless you want to stick to the particular topic that you just brought up, Ken.
Nope. Diane, did you have a question or a comment?
I have a question, and well, my comment is that every time I think I'm clear on this, I get more confused when we're talking about trying to blend in the taxing districts, and I think I understand the concern, but I think the overall view that we're supposed to take is to balance out the districts so that the first thing is that from a population point of view, there's some equity there. And then the other ones, and thanks for bringing that screen back up so that it draws us back into the purpose of this. But it seems to me, and Stuart can probably correct me if I'm wrong, is that the problems with the taxing districts versus the polling sites and the council districts has to do wherever the consultants are recommending pulling from a district into a taxing district. It's not when a district falls outside the line, because that's not a problem. Like you were just looking in A, the upper left corner of A, where it falls outside the taxing district. Right, Stuart? It's only a problem where their lines are considering like taking from D and moving that into A, which then impacts the different ballots because they're not in the first taxing district to vote there.
Well,
Am I saying that in?
if you take something out of a taxing district and put it in a different council district, you've still got a ballot that the rest of that council district does not use because it has taxing district commissioners on it. That's the only difference. And then unfortunately, that means we have to order them separately, keep them separate, keep the voters separate, only hand out the correct ballots.
Okay, but
That's
how
the
is that,
problem.
to Diana's point though, how is that different than any of the split districts we have now? Because it's not just C1 and C2 on a split
No, we
between.
would now have C1, C2, and C3.
Okay,
which
but
would
how
be-
many
which would be
split
everybody
districts?
east of
How many split districts do we have now? Is
13.
there B1 and B2 and C and D?
B1, B2, C1, C2, D1, D2, E1, E2, E3,
Okay,
A1, A2, A3, and A4 currently.
okay, so there are already ones that are multiple, but those are considered okay just because the potential voting
Well,
population.
A1 and A2 are the entirety of the first taxing district. A3 and A4 are the rest of the pieces of A, some on the east, some on the west,
Mhm.
arbitrarily sent to the other spots. I mean, we don't have, currently, we wouldn't have to have an A4. We could send everybody from there to Kendall. But I don't think they want to go that far. And the last 40 years, they've all voted at Nathan Hale. So I wouldn't be proposing that we make that kind of change. But as I now understand the proposal, we may now have 15 voting districts. The 15 different ballot situations. Because those two little pieces are unlike anything that they're adjacent to. They have a different ballot. It's the taxing district lines. They don't follow the streets, so they can't be made to match up.
Well, and that's the thing that gets me. It feels like we're trying to square a circle and
Yeah,
it can't be done. So it's
not
like,
by us, the
well,
legislature.
no, but not within the constraints that it's like we've got the census blocks, we've got the taxing district, we've got the voting district. So
That's right. It also means we can't have similar districts between municipal and state elections very easily, and all sorts of other problems.
right.
You've been a terrible burden on us for quite a while. As to that, though, well, again, there's study you can do about it, but
Well, and so that's just it. Like this isn't
also violating.
whatever we do here isn't going to change that, right?
No,
Like we will have a problem regardless. It's just, do we want this problem or that problem?
it depends on the problem.
Well,
Well, I mean, more polling places is an expensive problem.
yeah.
The less polling places if you ignored those taxing to the census block issue, just means that we wouldn't have perfect census block ethnicity data between these areas. And yeah, I have to work from a number of voters, which I can estimate the number of residents, but it's kind of hard to do otherwise. And you know,
I
your
see,
consultants won't do it.
sorry to interrupt. I see Preeti, you've had your hand raised for a while. Did you?
Yeah, the reason why I had put that slide before, because right now we are supposed to look at council districts. And we are supposed to follow the taxing districts line as much as possible. So whenever we talk about these plans, we go back to the taxing districts, which we already know are 100 years old, and they do not follow any sensible line that we can see. So, and typically when we talk about polling, once the council districts are done, then the precincts are adjusted so that we don't have little small pieces where you would have to have polling booths or voting equipment there. So once the council districts are done, then we are supposed to, not we, whoever is supposed to work on the precincts and fix those. So that is the process which is followed across the board, across the country. So, and as far as the taxing districts go, we are supposed to take them into consideration as much as practical. So well, that is all I wanted to say. And of course, whatever you all think.
Right, and I don't know if I'm allowed to speak. May I make a comment?
Yes.
Okay, and that's kind of where I am, is that I feel like if we're putting in the work and we're doing the work, that is something that definitely needs to be addressed, because in my opinion, it seems that we're very outdated and we're not compliant. And while obviously, no, I don't want to spend money that we don't have, and certainly we can't spend money we don't have, I'm wondering if there is some kind of a solution, if it's utilizing another polling location, splitting, because again, I don't know what the cost yet to run an election is, but if we're talking about one additional ballot machine, 90 ballots, and 3 or 4 poll workers, is that feasible? And because it seems that we should be in compliance and we should be figuring out a way to make this work. But I also respect and understand your knowledge and your tenure, Stuart, and I get where you're coming from too. But I'm just trying to figure out if there's any possible way to make it work.
Yeah, change the taxing district elections to a different process. Then you wouldn't have to pay any attention whatever to their lines. I mean, they could have a big town meeting kind of thing for the people within their district. That would work for them. They don't have to have, I don't believe, there's no legal requirement in state law requiring them to have their elections at the same time as council elections.
I think the concern there is, I'm sorry, Ken, can I jump in for a second?
I'm sorry, Diana.
Am I on? Okay. I think the concern there is because our taxing district officials are actually, part of political lines, and that's probably why that exists, because they're funded through one of 2 or 3 or 4 parties. And so I think they probably look at, you're talking to a completely unaffiliated, so I know nothing about the political stuff, but I assume that there would be some pushback because of the cost then for campaigning and funding and not kind of piggybacking on the other lines. It is what I think. But I just want to offer up one other thought that I have too while I'm listening to this, is that without knowing the dollars, Stuart, I know you can appreciate it's a little hard for people to really kind of balance just what we're talking about. just kind of, just in general, I would be less concerned with the dollars, although I'm not anxious to add anything more to the budget, believe me. But I'm less concerned with the dollars than I am with people being burdened by having to go across town to be able to vote. Or a considerable distance from where they live, because I think many people have been spoiled by either being able to walk or, it's really close to their home. But having said that, isn't the trend in the next 5 years that there'll probably be less physical people at polling places anyway, with early voting and no excuse absentee, and there'll probably be things that we haven't even thought of yet. I see that as a declining population. It doesn't help you for 2025. I understand that, but for 2025, and I would say, first of all, it would be in that budget. It's not like we have to dig up something that doesn't exist in the 2024 budget. But I would say if we got beyond that, it's probably going to be a whole different ball game in 2026 and 27, and definitely in 28.
This only applies in the odd numbered years. Has nothing whatever to do with the even numbered years for state elections, just to keep it. Nothing that you've said was wrong. It's only the odd numbered years this matters in.
So even if it's just a state and a federal, though, but don't just go get assigned to a polling place based on
Yes,
your
you have nothing to
district?
do with the taxing districts.
No, I'm talking about the regular council. The regular districts. So if
Yeah,
someone
okay.
suddenly moved from A to C or C to A or D to A.
Those aren't the districts in the state election.
Mhm.
They're one
I
137th,
see what you're saying. They're 1-to-1. Okay. Yeah, Stuart, do you
They'll
have,
get
I
changed.
don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any sense of what a tabulator costs and the
Well,
cost
right
of
now
a
they don't
moderator
exist. Yeah,
sorry?
Diane, right now they don't exist. The state's buying new ones. Maybe they'll be available by next fall. I'm just saying we don't have them. Supposedly they were going to be ready this fall, but they're not. And they'll be getting them. They're probably 5,000 or 6,000 a piece, but we don't buy them. The state does. But
So
it's
for the
we
tabulators,
program the ballots.
if we,
We print the ballots, we program them, we hire the people that man the lines, we haul all sorts of equipment, forms, and other things to each of these places to service all that. And, you're talking several thousand dollars typically. It's hard to know how we would try to skinny the cost down as much as possible, of course.
if you were talking about 3 or 4 extra places, if that were to happen, you'd still be looking at probably under $10,000 per site, between the tabulator, the tables, all the documents, the moderator, the checkers, the sticker, I voted today stickers and all that good stuff.
Although there wouldn't be any difference in the number of stickers, frankly.
Right.
But because the same number of people would likely vote, it's more like transportation of the equipment, printing, hiring, time to hire poll workers, train the poll workers. By the way, just for example, we are now starting training for the fall election. That's every Saturday between now and the election. For different poll workers. It's getting anybody to be interested in doing it. You need separate moderators and so forth. Again, we would try to, frankly, go skinnier than the state might like in terms of extra people, and even just an extra checker line might be enough. But all these things add to cost and effort, storage. There's a lot of cost to it. I'd much rather not have the problem, frankly, by simply finding a different way to deal with the taxing districts.
And 2 things for point of reference. First, why is it not feasible to have those voters affected by that potential change, having them vote at either City Hall or the registrar's office?
Well, space. We don't have enough room for a polling place in our office. We are already gonna be using practically every available square foot for early voting and same-day registration and absentee balloting in this election. That's gonna be around in the future as well in municipal elections.
So the ROV's office couldn't secure a room for 90 voters in City Hall?
Possibly, but you have two of them here, and neither of them are actually in it would not be in district for either of those two little pieces. But yeah, that would be a possibility. Maybe there's some other place. We might have to rent it. I don't know. We could probably keep those two little places. Maybe we could find some place and have them both in the same place, two separate halves of the same place. That at least would save a little bit if be only one physical location then. That might be possible. But really, really small polling places just cost money without accomplishing much. That's all.
We do them. I mean, we do them for primaries and, you know, obviously, presumably, we must have factors within the budget where we plan for primaries that,
Oh, the city will cough up the money if the council ultimately has to approve this. If they do this, they'll have to cough up the money to support it.
okay, so,
They've got the best fund balance in the state, as most of you know. So, I mean, it's not like they can't do it. I'm not sure where the extra storage space that we would need would come from for the equipment, but
so I guess we have to outweigh the pros and cons of bringing things kind of up to date, so to speak, and compliant versus not.
And hopefully
sure.
Diana and Stuart's conversation to come back to us next week, we can kind of hone in on that. Does that work? Does that work, Stuart? Does that work, Diana?
Yes, definitely.
Great, great, great.
And I will make a point to come into the office whenever it works for you.
Excellent.
Okay.
What-
Preeti has her hand raised. If we could jump to her really quickly.
Sure.
Yes. All I'm saying is that the taxing districts cannot be fixed, right? And we do have to create these districts. And if we continue on this line, I'm not sure what the solution is, because the charter clearly says, you know, you follow the taxing districts as much as practical. So I think, you know, Stuart and Diana have to figure things out amongst themselves. And what we can do is just show you the options, show you the pros and cons, and be able to target what we are supposed to do, which is create districts which are well balanced in population, in equality, and those kinds of things.
So one quick question, because Stuart, you had brought a lot of these issues up, I think the first time we met. And then I think there was a point where you had proposed an alternate map. And then Preeti and Sam, I think you all had tried to, in option 2, I think it was, you had shown something that tried to lean into what Stuart was recommending. Is that accurate? I guess
More or less,
between
but-
options 2 and 3. Well, no, wait, let me finish, Stuart. So between options 2 and 3, I feel like you were trying to satisfy the concerns Stuart raised and saying, you know, either way, it's Sophie's choice. Like you have to pick the best of a bad hand. And so then it seemed like they were both good options to consider. I missed a couple of meetings, so Stuart, I never saw your reactions to that, but and now Diana is coming in and says, and I think you're saying you want between option 2 and 3. So it seems like it seems like we're close. It's just
Yeah.
like the devil in the details. So hopefully, I'm thinking if I did read that right, maybe when we get together again, if we could identify, just like you did the pros and cons, I think at one point, which was really helpful, right? To see, again, best of a bad hand. So it would be nice to see on those pros and cons what the impact is to the voting issues that Stuart and Diana are raising. So
Some of the issues that are being raised here, this forum may not be the right one to solve those.
yep,
Probably beyond, like, especially if you're looking at the census blocks and the way they are splitting.
Right.
Already splitting the taxing districts. Those are issues that we cannot resolve in this forum. So once the redistricting is done for the districts, after that, we do, or, whoever does, redo the precincts to adjust what Stuart is saying. So we could redo the precincts and make the polling places more, appropriate, or maybe changing how the precincts are formed to make it easier for people to vote. But this particular forum, I don't think is there to resolve that particular issue. That has to be resolved later on. So we can discuss it here as much, but we cannot resolve it because
Understood.
we are bound by the Census Bureau and the data that they publish, the population data, so that we have to work with that data. And the issue of polling places has to be resolved later on. And if it costs something, I think the city will have to, look into that and see how they can resolve it.
Thank you. Relative to Scott's comment, I just wanted to give everybody a feel for what our timelines are. Our next meeting will be when Diana is official. We have that meeting on the 12th. We have a following Thursday, the 19th, we have a meeting. And then the following week, as you have all heard, we are rescheduling the public hearing from the 26th, Thursday, to Wednesday, the 25th. So we should be on board as to our decision making up by that time. From that point, we as a team can meet on the 3rd, but Preeti and Sam will not be available. And our report is due to council by the 10th of October. Their council meeting is on the 8th. So I need to verify if we need to submit that by the 8th or if we submit it to council on the 10th and they address it following that date. But those are our times and dates that we all need to be aware of. Okay.
Ken, can I ask a question on that? I know you have the public hearing
Yes,
comment coming up. So the notice for that has to be, is it 10 days before the legal notice for the publication?
for the public hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's all, I'm pretty sure it's already on the schedule, the meeting schedule.
right. But I mean, the actual legal notification so that it's posted and that it then goes into the Norwalk Hour.
Correct.
And if
days.
that's 10 days and that backs us up to the 15th, and it doesn't really make sense to post for a public hearing if there's not a document that someone can actually read and understand to be able to, to participate and comment. Not that there wouldn't be some sort of a overview that night. I'm not sure what we're envisioning for that, but someone should have this information ahead of time. And what I was suggesting as well is that I think it's really important that when the public hearing gets communicated legally and noticed, that the streets that are being recommended for changing one way or the other need to be listed. So someone can look at an alphabetical list and see right away if they're impacted, not parcel number, not, lot number, but
And
and how would
Diane,
that happen if that needs to happen by the 15th?
which would mean by our next meeting.
Right.
Well, I agree that I think public input is definitely important here, because if we're making changes that voters don't necessarily agree with or see fit, I think they need to definitely have some sense prior to the public meeting, or certainly a presentation of what the proposal is at that meeting to properly weigh in. I don't know, I don't know how it's been handled at, from different towns and cities. But I do have concerns with a legal, document going in a newspaper that some read, some don't. That it won't truly outreach and be communicative with the people that it needs to be.
But Diane, I wasn't suggesting that as public outreach. I mean, the city's definitely got to do a broad communication through, whatever, all the means available. But what I was suggesting is that the legal notice itself has to be more than there's a public hearing on reapportionment. When it's that cryptic and ambiguous, no one will know what it is. I think in other things like this, and Pretty can talk to this maybe with New Haven and other Connecticut towns, but it may make more sense to just, instead of having a formal public hearing on this, maybe have a public forum on where we are, and then it would be either, I don't know, maybe thinking either ordinance or council then has like the actual legal public hearing. But if this is going to be the public hearing, then we need to be prepared to give the public everything they need to know to make an informed decision so they can comment. And that's outside of whatever, PR campaign goes on so that people are aware. And even, I don't know if there's time for a postcard mailing to the people that are affected, but, certainly, like I said, social media and maybe they could even, I don't know. I mean, whatever you need to do to get the word out.
Right, and I would assume that Attorney Candela would be helping and facilitating how we move forward here.
Once you approve a plan, what we do is we create a PowerPoint detailing with detailed maps where people can see the areas of change, and we describe the districts. So we provide all that information, and we provide a zoomable map that the city would put it on their website, so that before the meeting, the community has all the information. They have had the time to digest, and then they can come and attend the meetings where they can give meaningful feedback. Otherwise, if they are not aware of it, then, the meeting is a waste, because they're just trying to understand what the changes are. So we provide a PowerPoint, a detailed map that typically cities put on their website.
Okay, so they will have the opportunity to review something and have working knowledge of what the plans are prior to the public meeting. Public hearing.
Yes, yes. And typically it's one plan or two plans, whatever you all decide to approve. And the committee would approve one plan, so.
Okay. So that will be our next step, and our next meeting is to hopefully hear from Attorney Candela to verify what we've just spoken about, and the process through Preeti as far as disseminating that information to the public. And are there any other further comments from any of the commission members before I adjourn the meeting? somebody move to adjourn the meeting, or should I do that?
I move to adjourn.
Scott, great, thank you. I thank everybody for your participation and look forward to next week. You have a good night.
So thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.